everybody. I'm going to take a copy of that last presentation and just attach it to John's performance review for the year. It's done, great work. You'd think that we coordinated our presentations today, but we did not. All right, is everybody motivated? I am motivated. I am motivated to start working on my growth mindset. I'm working on my gyms. I'm going to start doing some mindfulness. I'm definitely going to set a timer to get up out of my chair and walk away. No, this has been a really great session. I'm really glad to be here. I'm glad to be presenting today. And the title of my presentation, which isn't in your agenda today, but it's What Can Organizations Learn from Organisms? And those organisms are ants. And so when I pitched this idea to one of my friends, he did a really big eye roll. He just like, eyes just rolled right out of his head. I was like, what's that about? And he was like, well, where'd you get that idea? I'm like, well, what's all this animosity? I'm like, are you thinking I'm going to talk about how the queen ant runs the whole colony and all the worker ants do everything the queen ant wants to do, they serve the queen ant? No. So if you've got that idea in your head, that is not what this presentation is going to be about. I've been in management for a long time, and I know that I serve my employees, that they pretty much boss me around all day, as you can tell from John's presentation. But no, I am going to talk to you guys about ants. So, am I doing everything? All right, great. So, one of the most favorite gifts that my children received, it was from their uncle. It was an ant farm. And they would spend hours every day when they got home just watching this ant farm, watching the ants go through and dig tunnels, and they would just be curious about what the ants were doing. And as the ant farm got a little old and the ants had dug a lot of tunnels, and maybe I wasn't making sure that there was enough water in the ant farm for the ants to survive, some of the ants started to die. And what the kids noticed as they were watching the ant farm was that the ants began to move and separate the dead ants from the live ants. And they would push them off into an area where they weren't. And if there was an ant that was injured, a couple of ants would go and move those ants away. And they became really curious about learning more about ants. So in turn, that meant I had to learn a lot about ants. So I bought them books, we watched videos. I will say that I'm always curious. I'm just like my sons, like I love insects, so it was neat for me. So I also need to admit right now that at one point in time, in 1998, when the Ants movie came out, I did go watch that movie as an adult. I did not have children. I did not have children for 10 more years after I watched that movie. I enjoyed it very much, so I recommend you guys watching it. But the one thing that we learned about these ants, and we watched a couple of videos, and there was this National Geographic Kids video called Antzilla. It's also recommended viewing for you guys. And they started to describe the ants as, and this is not a new idea, it's novel, right? During the presentation for Antzilla, they actually discussed how the ants all work, they behave like cells of the entire organism, just like cells in a human body. And these ants all have different responsibilities and functions in the ant colony. And when they cooperate and work together, they create what's called a superorganism. And when you look at the definition side by side of a superorganism next to an organization, there's some very key similarities. The superorganism is a highly specialized functional group that makes up the whole. An organization is full of employees with varied functions that make up the whole. And so at the time that my kids were becoming curious about these ants, I was also going through a transition in my career where I was being more curious about what could I do to improve our organization, and specifically our team in North District. And the commonalities started to align with what I was seeing with my group of employees. And so when you look at it from an organizational structure, there are positions within the group. And one of the favorite species that we learned about that I loved were the leafcutter ants. And that may be because I'm also a vegetarian. But the leafcutter ants they're a highly specialized group, and every ant has its own job duty. The scouts, they go out and they're looking for good hunting grounds for really nice succulent leaves. And the foragers go out and they're cutting leaves. You have small foragers and big foragers depending on what they're harvesting. They also have inspector ants, and those inspector ants are checking out all the leaves that are being brought back and making sure that there's no bacteria on them before they bring them down into the home, where the farmer ants go and place these intricate honeycomb-looking structures where they grow the fungus that they actually eat. And so I'm looking at all these different responsibilities that each ant has, and they're cooperating to serve the whole of the community, the benefit of their colony. And there's a different type of ant, the harvester ant, when I was learning all of these things about ants with my children. But in the harvester ant species, they can actually smell the ant and know what position that they have. So with harvester ants, if the guards at the entry to the ant colony, they can actually, based on smell, count. And they don't need a scientific calculator. They're doing this based off of smell and sense, but they're actually counting the number of ants that are coming back into the ant colony. And they can find out, and they determine if there is enough food coming in, or if there isn't enough food coming in. And based on that, they make decisions on what to do next. And so I was really enthralled with how our classifications, our job classifications, are set up like ant colonies. And being an employee here for 17 years, depending on where you are in your career, you may feel like you're isolated because we're all in our silos. And I really the idea of knowing the job duties of all the other ants just intuitively, that resonated with me. And of the 17 years I've been here, 15 of those I've been in supervisory or management roles. So that means I've sat on a lot of interview panels. Probably, I lost count many years ago. And 90% of the time, the candidate that we select is the candidate that has the most varied and diverse background and experience. And I know that when I'm the hiring manager and I have to make those phone calls and tell the candidates that weren't selected why weren't they selected for the position, it's normally you did a great job on your interview. It's just that the selected candidate, the successful candidate, had this varied background experience that they were able to bring to the table, and that they could come into that position and hit the ground running. And how awesome would it be if we could all just sense by smell what the job duties of everyone around us were, that they could contribute to any position as we move through. And so, fortunately, at our organization, we do have some programs that help us with that. Some of the programs, I think for all 5 of the ones that are listed, I've either participated in these programs, I've promoted them to my employees or encouraged them to look into them. Strategic mentoring, that's where you can get paired up with a peer or a manager, and you guys can share your experiences throughout the workday and just talk to each other. I participated in that program. The cross-training program, I encourage my employees to cross-train. I've encouraged some of the unsuccessful candidates that I've interviewed to cross-train, to vary their background and experience. Job shadowing is a new program. That was something that I actually had the opportunity to do when I was in the Leadership Academy. And that was the best experience because you're shadowing a director and you're hearing all these things that you may not know anything about, but at the end of the day, you have a chance to ask them questions about all the things that weren't said in the meeting that everyone there knew about, but you had no clue what they're talking about. And specifically, that was in the finance division. I had no clue. But these are all programs geared towards helping us to build that well-rounded experience that we need to be a well-functioning organization, just like that super organism of the ant colony. And so I'm saying this, and I might as well put a caveat on here. John knows this better than anyone else. I can't operationally allow any of my equipment operators right now or mechanics, so if you're in the room, to go out and cross-train for 6 months in the middle of winter. Can't lose you. So there are some limits to what you're able to do. And I know as an employee, I didn't feel like I had the time to do the cross-training program. I honestly, I was always really busy trying to, move up in my career to help my colleagues. So I just never took that opportunity. And before I finish up, I want to tell you about an experience that we have in our maintenance districts. This happens in most maintenance districts throughout the northern part of the United States where we actually get snow, and it's called winter snow inspection. And this is a 2-month period where everyone in our maintenance district, so that's equipment operators, equipment mechanics, the parts room staff, the finance folks, the administrative staff, we're all working together cooperatively to establish a goal. And that's to make sure that all 90-some pieces of our equipment get ready for winter snow inspections. That means taking all of our dump trucks and getting the snow plows on them. The equipment operators, they're working on getting the trucks ready for the salt treatments. That means inhibiting the rust. So they're getting in there and getting all the rust off the rims and painting the trucks for that rust inhibition. You've got the equipment mechanics that are making sure that everything that could have gone wrong with that truck, since it's been preventive maintained at the shop at its regular schedule, that all those repairs are made. You've got the parts folks that are ordering all the parts to make sure the mechanics can do their job. You've got the finance section making sure that the POs are set up so that we can pay all the suppliers that we've been ordering from. And everybody is working towards that common goal. Now, I'm not going to say that it's without any hiccups, because the equipment operators, they're getting pulled in so many directions while they're trying to get this equipment ready for winter. There's still roadway incidents that they have to respond to. There's still work orders that need to be done. Work doesn't stop, but we're working collectively to get to those things. So I will say that throughout this experience, and this was the best year, and John's speech works to that, this was the best year that the district has ever done in decades. I mean, the trucks were all put together, they were all painted, they were looking good. You can see from the photo here, they color coordinated their trucks. They put a lot of effort into it. They really did. They worked so well together as a team. And I celebrated. I was excited. We did a pizza party at all the yards. I was like, you guys are fantastic, recognizing all the hard work that they put in. But do you know what happened? All I got was complaints right afterwards. Complaints. This could have gone better if I had enough paint to make sure my truck was done. We didn't get Romasol, we didn't get that undercoating on the trucks fast enough, so my truck was really rusty. I had to put a lot of work into it. And there were, complaints about, oh, I can get the parts I needed fast enough to get those repairs done. But you know what? I accept those complaints. I like those complaints because that means that they're going to work harder, that they want it better, that they are ready to work together and make sure that next year we're even better than we were this year. So I accepted all that. And the other thing that I noticed, it was like a light bulb did go off. That these guys, I can't give them the opportunities to do strategic mentoring or cross-training, but what I can do is put together a working group where my equipment operators, my equipment mechanics, my parts room staff, all these people, the finance people, they can get together in a working group, maybe spend 2 months, a day, every week, working on all those issues that they brought up after this year's snow inspection, and work cooperatively to achieve those goals. Now, this is something that all of you guys can take back to your own sections and divisions and get with your staff. If there's a problem that you guys have been dealing with for years and years and years, and you can't see a way to fix it by yourself, you shouldn't do it by yourself. We're a team. So get together, form a working group. And like the boys, like my boys, who, when you're participating in these working groups, be curious, ask questions, be that growth mindset that Angela was talking about. Really get to know your colleagues, and between all the various sections, you'll begin to realize that we'll gain efficiencies in our processes, we'll have improved morale, and maybe even just have a little fun. So, I'd like to thank you all.